We look like we're good. All right, so today's topic tonight is optimizing adrenal health to reduce stress. Who's ever heard of their adrenal glands before? Good. All right, because it's not something we typically tend to hear about in healthcare and stuff. So just kind of familiarity and stuff. So what we're going to talk about tonight is what are the adrenal glands and what do they do? How does stress affect our body? We all know that a little bit personally. What sort of testing that we would do to look at your adrenal gland? And then once we look at the testing and stuff, how can then we support you? The lifestyle changes that we need to do to improve our adrenal health. And we'll look at some nutrition, we'll look at supplementation, some helpful tips and stuff, just to sort of give you, on the path and stuff. One of the practitioners I worked with a long time ago, he said, oh, you don't need to test those and stuff. You know people are stressed. And I said, yeah, it's true. I said, but it sometimes does help to really identify and give you a roadmap of, yeah, I'm stressed, and here's some information that really tells me that I am so stressed. And so looking at what we can do then helps to give you, a little more of a roadmap. So at the end of our presentation tonight, we'll do a little question and answers. So if we can just sort of hold off on questions until the end, we'd appreciate it. I want to keep the flow going for the evening. All right, so what are your adrenal glands? So your adrenal glands are two little glands that sit on top of the kidneys, and they produce hormones. And these hormones control your blood sugar, which helps you and they also help you to burn fat and protein. And they produce hormones that help you react to stressors like a major illness or an injury. And they also help to regulate your blood pressure. One of the hormones that they produce is cortisol, and this converts proteins into energy. It stimulates the liver to convert amino acids into sugars, and it counteracts inflammation and allergies. So it helps to kind of shut down that immune system a little bit. It maintains the blood pressure, like I mentioned, and it also aids in stress reactions. So I kind of give people the example. Your adrenal glands produce hormones that help to kind of balance your body for your stressors. Everyone's heard of the fight and flight response, and then we've got rest and digest. So we've got these two big nervous systems in our body, and one's go and one's slow down. And so your adrenal glands if we're being chased by a bear, our adrenal glands kick in these hormones that start to stimulate parts of our body to run away from the bear. So it would improves the sugar to our muscles. We've got energy. Increase the dilation of our blood vessels. So we've got blood flow to our muscles. Dilate our eyes so we can run a little bit more. And then it would shut down other organ systems in the body that we don't need when we're running away from a bear. Like we don't need to digest food. We don't need to worry about our sleep habits and stuff, or like our hormones to help us sleep. So we've got this kind of go and then stop. But I always tell people, we're not running from bears anymore, or very rarely are we, and stuff. We've got stressors all day long that are in different forms now. We have driving in traffic, we've got our jobs, we have our family dynamics. And so those little stressors do play that same reaction to our body as if you're running from a bear sometimes. So we always want to sort of take a look at these stressors, and our bodies just innately go back to as if we're running from a bear, although we don't have them anymore. So just kind of wanted to kind of address that. So, Dr. Tetlow, why don't you? This is a kind of a really complicated slide, and she's got her pointer.
So, as Anne-Marie shared, I kind of see the adrenal glands as like a reserve bank, or like they could be like an emergency bank. So, this is a bank where you don't want to be visiting this bank all the time. You want to visit it when you really, really need it. And so, the bank is going to give you really important resources like blood sugar, or it's going to be able to give you energy from fats and proteins. So you saw those adrenal glands in that previous slide, and there's a lot of really necessary resources that are stored there. This is a helpful picture, and this is just to give you the whole gestalt of this picture. Basically, there's a system, an axis, a connection between our brain and the rest of our body. And some of the messengers are hormones. So we have to communicate between our organs. We have to communicate our intentions like, okay, now run, right? So how does our intention translate into an actual action? It's through things like hormones. And our adrenals are really important for translating so that we actually can run. We have the resources, and the resources are available. So this slide shows the brain up here. So this is our hypothalamus, and our pituitary. So these are structures that are right in the center of our brain. So this is really kind of cloistered. It's kind of hidden away, very central, and it's kind of a messaging center. It's like central intelligence. And then this messaging center is going to communicate with the adrenal glands, and it's going to communicate through hormones. So the hormones are the messaging molecules. So here is one adrenal gland. It's kind of sitting on top of a kidney. Here's another adrenal gland. And this is just showing that there's different pathways so that central intelligence can communicate with our adrenals. This is one outcome of the communication. So it just says short-term response. So you can have a communication that says, like, run right now. So what happens when we need to run immediately is there's a message that comes from our brain, and it affects our adrenals, and the adrenals express the let's run now molecules, the catecholamines. So it says epinephrine, norepinephrine. Everybody kind of heard of those guys? So those are emergency hormones that it can be amazing to feel that surge. Some people are feeling these all the time, and it's very uncomfortable to have them on all the time. So that's something that we look at in the clinic when these are not turning off. It's a short-term response. So as you heard from Anne-Marie, I better keep going here.
Yeah.
Increased heart rate, blood pressure, liver converts basically resources into glucose. You're going to be able to breathe more easily. Changes in blood flow leading to increased alertness, decreased digestion, reduced urine output, increased metabolic rate. And then this is very briefly a long-term response. So this is looking at more long-acting hormones that are going to actually make your blood pressure go up and stay up over time, increase blood volume, increase blood pressure. And then it's going to basically just be in a state where you're mobilizing resources. You're not necessarily storing and rejuvenating and recovering. You're using and utilizing resources.
Yeah, so your short term would be like you're in a car accident and all your hormones get, so to what your body responds to an acute car accident. Long-term stress would be you're driving up the Blue Route back and forth every single day. It's just like, oh my goodness, here we go. And so there's the long-term and there's the acute, and we need both of them. But if you chronically, hit the long-term hormones over and over and over again, the adrenal glands just get fatigued, and we need to support them. And we need to support them from the brain down. So what's the brain telling them? What's the body giving them for the body to make those hormones? So it's a top-down and bottom-up approach. This slide this is kind of our whole sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic. So this is our fight and flight, and then our rest and digest. And so these hormones impact everything. So people always ask, so what kind of symptoms do I have when I have an adrenal dysfunction? I'm like, well, pick an organ system, because it's different in every person. It affects your lungs, it could affect your skin, it could affect your muscles, it could be your energy levels and stuff. So the adrenal glands impact everything because of how many organ systems it does touch. Do you want to? Right. And then this is kind of all right, so what we do when we're looking at the adrenal glands, and we're not just, even though these are just a few lab tests, we actually look at the whole body. So we're looking at everything like how's your sugar, how's your insulin, how's your kidneys, how's your liver, are you anemic at all, what's your blood? So we're doing a lot more testing than just these specific adrenal tests, but I want to kind of focus on what we're looking at. So we tend to look at your cortisol level on a blood test, DHEAS on a blood test, and I'll go that in the next slide. You'll see where that comes in. Our insulin, hemoglobin A1C, which is a sugar, it's a longer-term marker of assessing your sugar. And then we do a stress profile. So this is a saliva test to look at your cortisol a little closer. Now, blood would be a great way to do our cortisol, but it's a one shot. So it's just, we would do it at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we only can see what's your cortisol first thing in the morning. When we do the saliva test, you spit into these little tubes. It sounds easy, but it's actually quite challenging to spit into these little tubes, and you do it 4 times in a day. the reason why we do the saliva test is practicality. You know, you don't want to go and get blood drawn late at night, you know, 4 times in a day and stuff. It's just, and then also the fact of getting blood drawn is the stress itself. So that's why we tend to do the saliva test, because of practicality, and it gives us a nice picture of what is your cortisol doing throughout the day. There is also urinary cortisol tests, but the same thing, it just gives us doesn't show us what's going on in the day. It's just a total amount. So these are the sort of the tests that we kind of look at right now. And then hormone testing. And the reason why we do hormone testing, Dr. Tetlow, you get to go through this fun slide. This is how cortisol impacts. Cortisol is just not solely in itself. It actually impacts other hormones. And there's these pathways our body does to make hormones. You don't just make testosterone, which is a male sex hormone, or make estrogen, a female sex hormone. It has to go through pathways. And so this kind of describes our pathways. Sure, yeah.
So this is a great slide, and this is also an example of a test result. So we actually do tests. We can see your version of this, and this is something that you would not get in a regular doctor's office. So what this is all hormones in the body are a cascade. It's like they start in one form, and then they become another form, and they cascade to another form, and they kind of sequence down. They're all based on cholesterol, like that's what the backbone of all hormones is made of. So like people who don't have enough cholesterol have a problem with their hormones because they can't make them. So what this is a picture of is pregnemal. This is like the first one. This is like the top of the cascade, and then it can kind of go down this direction, and it goes across, and then it comes down, or it can go across, and then it can come down. And this is everything. So this is your blood pressure, all the hormones that do your blood pressure, this section right here. Can you see where I'm putting my pointer? And over here, this is your cortisol axis, all the different hormones for that. Over here, your male hormones. So you see how this one goes across, and it goes to this intermediate, and then basically all the male hormones are going to come in this section. And then female hormones, estrogens, all of these in the blue box are estrogens. They come from this intermediate as well. And it's kind of the end of the cascade. And actually, we do a lot of testing with estrogens because some estrogens are very friendly and some of them are inflammatory. And inflammatory estrogens can cause cancer in your breasts and your ovaries and your uterus. So we actually want to make sure that the estrogen types are healthy. So to get back on task, we're showing this to you because let's say we're doing a real focus on the adrenals. Someone who has a tremendous amount of energy going into cortisol, just to making the adrenals, you're hitting that reserve bank all the time. You're constantly on, you're constantly going. You're actually going to shunt energy, and these pathways are going to be overexpressed towards the cortisol. And you're going to see higher levels on that person's chart of some of these intermediates, and then you might see lower levels in things like testosterone. So this is just a perfect way to kind of see your own expression of all the hormones in your body. And we get really excited about this in the clinic because your program and your recommendations can really be very specific and personal if you actually know what's going on in your body.
And that's why, you know, we look at the cortisol, and you can see DHEAs on the top, because the cortisol and DHEA, they play a balance and role with each other. Someone's cortisol levels may start looking normal, but their DHEA might start falling sooner. So we're like, oh, this could be a very early response in someone who's going into some adrenal irritation, basically. And then over time, with chronic stressors on their body, so that blue root up and down, you know, over time, then you have the DHEA falling and your cortisol falls. And then you can see if DHEA is falling and our cortisol is falling, where are the rest of our sex hormones? So, you know, our female and our male hormones. And then we lose, and you can see where the symptoms kind of cascade down. And then the thyroid rolls into this as well, too. And so we tend to look at the thyroid, the adrenal profile, and then the sex hormones as sort of triplets kind of thing. They all kind of work together and stuff. So it's really important for us to take a look at that whole picture. So our next, and this is really kind of it's a great slide and stuff. I know it looks kind of confusing, but you can sort of see how you can get a lot of shifting happening. And then your environment also plays a big role into this as well too.
Should we just make sure they can see the DHEA? So this is what Anne-Marie is mentioning.
Right at the very top there.
This one right here. She's going to mention about testing for that one. Right, so this is over here on the male hormone side. Okay. But both men and women have healthy levels.
So men and women both have, testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. They just have different levels of them. So we want to make sure that those levels are supporting you and your health. So there we go. So this is the adrenal cortex stress profile. So this is that saliva test that I was talking about that you would spit in these tubes at 4 different times in the day. You can see first thing in the morning around 8 o'clock, then around noontime, sort of in the late afternoon just before dinner, and then early in the evening. So there's this thing called a cortisol awakening response. And so your cortisol basically peaks first thing in the morning, about half an hour, 45 minutes after you get up. So it's as high as it's going to be in your day. And then throughout the day, it falls. And actually does, and you can't really appreciate it on this curve itself, but it does a little dip even lower between like 1 and 3 in the afternoon. And then it keeps falling until bedtime. And then while we sleep, it comes back up again. So there's a couple things to appreciate about that. We should, we got that energy in the morning. And so that's what we want to see is this high curve in the morning. And then it falls as the day goes. We get a little dip in the afternoon. And that's why most cultures take a high tea or siesta. We don't. And that's actually when our cortisol levels are really kind of low. We need to do that, but unfortunately our workplaces don't allow that. And then it keeps falling as the night goes on. So we're trying to look at where you are in this cortisol curve. So there's kind of like 4 different patterns of an adrenal response. So you could have very high morning cortisol or high cortisol out throughout the day. And that's usually an acute stress. And it's kind of an early marker of a change. So if we check someone who got into that car accident yesterday and we check their cortisol level the next day, it's going to be, you want to be in that green zone, it's going to be in the red zone. Their cortisol is just kicking out because they're dealing with all the, oh, my car got damaged, so I have a huge deductible, oh, my neck hurts. So there's just all those stressors kind of going on. So that's that acute response that we tend to see. Sometimes you get this, like this one here, you get elevated sort of midday cortisol levels. That can be someone who's very anxious. Sometimes people who have the type A personality can kind of have that. And we want to make sure it kind of normalizes because just running that high cortisol over time tends to just fatigue the rest of the gland and the rest of the body out. Then at nighttime, we can also get elevated cortisol at nighttime. So, between that 10 o'clock, it starts to shoot back up again. And I always used to call it, when I was had little kids and breastfeeding and all my moms, we called it the witching hour. It's like the kids go down to bed and all of a sudden you got this surge of energy and you're doing the laundry and you're baking cookies for the next day and you just have this huge amount of energy because your cortisol is starting to go back up again and it's high, but then the next morning you feel like a slug and you can't get out of bed. So that we want to take a look at. Plus also if someone's cortisol is coming up pretty early in the evening, they may have sleep issues. They can't fall asleep. They're not getting a restless sleep. They might wake up in the middle of the night. So sleep is really, really critical. So we need to see, are you not sleeping because your cortisol is high? Or is your sleep issues causing your cortisol changes and stuff? So this just gives you an example of one of somebody's test here. And so you can see the morning, they look good. They get really high at lunchtime, and then they're sort of still high in the late afternoon, and then they're within normal at bedtime and stuff. So something either went on this day, or they're just really anxious in the middle of the day. Maybe it's stress at work or something. So that's what we kind of tie in as you as a. And I always say your lab. We don't treat a lab. We treat a person. But the labs kind of give us some tools to say, all right, what's going on? Do you see this curve? Is there something we can match and we can do to kind of help this out?
You might want to mention one other lifestyle choice that would cause that to go high right around lunchtime.
Or food choices
Yes.
too.
So let's say maybe I really need to get a lot accomplished. I've got a lot. I've got to prepare for my talk. I've got to support Anne-Marie, and actually she's preparing for the talk. Maybe I'm like, no, I have complete let me not say that. So let's say I need some nutrition, I need some glucose, I need to be able to perform these tasks that are very important to me, and I don't actually take the time to have the nutritional input. So maybe I skip lunch. If I skip lunch and I need those resources, I'm going to have to get the reserve bank to give them to me. So what I might do is have a huge surge in cortisol so that I can have the blood glucose to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hit my reserve bank. So that's another explanation. Now, if I had a huge stressor, or I had a car accident while I was going out at lunchtime, that's another explanation, and all of those things that Anne Marie was mentioning. But that's another way that you hit your reserve bank because you didn't feed yourself, you didn't nourish yourself.
And this can happen, I've seen it with a lot of clients. They get up in the morning, I'm not hungry, I just start going. Oh, I'll eat, 4 or 5 o'clock at night. And so they've skipped that fuel all day. Well, their body cannot survive without sugar in its system, the glucose in its system. So where is the body getting it from? Well, it's got to break it down. So the cortisol comes and breaks it down from the muscles and from the liver. So you have this fuel around so you can sustain your day and stuff. But that's not long-term sustaining. And plus it, irritates the liver and makes our sensitivity to insulin. And then we run into a whole host of problems. So I'm going to show you just a couple of other Okay, so these are a different company from a few years ago. You can see 2007 and 2008. They're 2 different companies, but you can still sort of appreciate the curve and stuff. So this is, we're going to call it patient A. You can see the June 2007. She's an exhausted mother of 2 children. One was a 2-year-old and one's a 4-month-old. She worked part-time in healthcare. She had a lot of social stressors. Her husband traveled for work about 80% of the time. Financial stressors. There was a big, huge business change and stuff, and they lost some financial security. And then she was just sort of just kind of not feeling herself. She was sort of emotionally just kind of exhausted, maybe some postpartum depression. She had some health issues with her 2 children. Her oldest one had some health concerns and stuff, and then her youngest one was born premature. So there's kind of a lot going on, and you can kind of see when she wakes up in the morning, she's not in that cortisol, sweet spot. And then it falls fast. And you can see noon, it's flat. Afternoon, it's flat. And you can see this would be tough for taking care of children and even working. This person's going to be tired. They're going to be exhausted all the time. And they're just not going to be able to, be optimally functioning in their work and their home place. And then you can see there's sort of at nighttime, there's sort of that surge of cortisol. Now it's in a normal range, but this person might feel better at nighttime. And that's that whole witching hour thing. Oh, she might feel like she can get some stuff done at night. But if she doesn't go to bed at a certain time, she's going to wake up in the morning still being low, still not feeling great. And then you can see we did some interventions with her, and then this was now 2008, so a year and a half later. There's improvement in her curve. You can see that now she's a little higher in the morning, so definitely better than where she was before, but she does fall really fast. But she still kind of stays in that curve. She's not flattening out. She's just kind of bottoming out on the bottom of the curve. So she's definitely feeling better. And this is actually with the addition of a 3rd child that she had. She had a 3-month-old in the second slide. But she was working at that point in time on more assistance in the home with her husband traveling. So she had some more help with childcare. She really cut back her work hours and then really did a lot of self-care, better sleep habits. She was doing her yoga and her Pilates, eating a balanced meal. And I think it's sometimes, some moms can understand, and dads, is that when you have small kids, sometimes you just don't structure your own meals. You're good with your kids, but you're not always great with yourself. So she got better with structuring her own meals and stuff, eating them more frequently and more balanced meals. So it just gives you sort of an example of a true patient as well. And these are just, like I said, an old lab that was used. All right, so what can we do, about our adrenal glands? How can we help them? The number one thing is really reevaluating our life stressors. What causes us stress? And that's a lot of, that personal internal work and stuff we have to sort of find. Because if we don't kind of address the stressors, we're always going to keep irritating our adrenal glands. And Dr. Wilson, James Wilson, he's out of Tucson, he's sort of the big started he started the whole adrenal fatigue book, now this is probably 10 years, at least over 10 years ago and stuff. And I've met him a few times. I had dinner with him and I asked him one day, I said, how long does it take to heal the adrenal glands? And he goes, you want an honest opinion? And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, I'll tell you never. You never completely heal them. He goes, because people can never get rid of their stressors. He goes, but someone who's really working hard at it, he goes, it's going to take them a couple of years. He goes, because we have so many dynamic things going on in our life. And it's hard to make all those changes, all of them at once. So you have to sort of pick your battles and what can you change? And that's where really evaluating your life stressors and what you can make quick changes on is important. Key, like we talked about sleep, you've got to sleep, and it has to be a consistent sleep pattern. The goal is 7 hours. 7 is this magic number in all healthcare studies. Helps with weight loss, blood sugar control, blood pressure control. And when you have adrenal fatigue and adrenal glands, like that last slide where the person's really bottoming out, you sometimes need more sleep and to really kind of give your body time to repair and restore itself. So the goal is 7 hours and kind of on a set schedule. So going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. Because you can see your cortisol curve is on a circadian rhythm, so it's like a clock. It doesn't care if you've been up at midnight or if you're up till 2 in the morning. It's going to come and go. But if you keep doing that, messing with your sleep, it is going to change how that curve flattens or spikes. Exercise is really important for adrenal glands. Now there are athletes who have, high-performance athletes who have adrenal problems and adrenal fatigue because they've overtrained. And we see that quite often with high-performance athletes. But generally, adrenal glands do need you to move. And I call it purposeful movement. It's just you've got to do something you love. Do you like to garden? Do you like to walk, swim? Just moving the whole body. Doing balancing exercises and stretching type of exercises is really important. Adrenal people tend to kind of have that muscle achy, joints hurt all the time. They're fatigued. So things like Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga and stuff is very centering, important for stress and taking a big deep breath, and it's helpful for stretching the body. And that's actually one thing I don't have on here is I think adrenal people, they just don't breathe. They're always, they need to stop and just like we did our centering at the very, very beginning. Thank you very much as well for that, is we need to stop and just, so everyone take a nice deep breath, big belly breath. Yeah, everything just kind of relaxes a little bit. So that helps those adrenal glands. And then all this restoration type of work. So Dr. Tetlow, this is one of your specialty areas. Why don't you kind of
handing over the restoration?
Yes, you love this stuff. She goes to conferences all the time for this. She loves this.
Yes, we try to go to the continuing medical education conferences that emphasize these things. I mean, I think if we're going to reevaluate stressors and see our own role in creating stress, then it's going to take a little bit of self-awareness to be able to evaluate like that. So sometimes it can be really frustrating to feel like I can't do anything about these stressors. I've got these stressors. So the opportunity to actually shift your adrenals is to see your own role, see what you're doing. So things that help us to see ourselves are things that bring our attention inward, but in a supportive way, not a critical way. So if you're constantly evaluating and you're becoming self-aware, but you're becoming aware of all your problems and how you don't do things well, and you still have the same stressor, and you really could have changed it, but you didn't, then it's not a recipe for actually moving forward and having a different outcome and feeling different throughout the day. So I love mindfulness. I'm a mindfulness teacher. Mindfulness is just, it's an important word to unpack because it just means being in the present moment in a compassionate way. And there's a formal way to do that, and there's an informal way to do that. So we can do that informally right now together. But there's a formal practice that's very powerful, and it actually changes a lot of these hormones in our brain and in our blood. So guided imagery visualization, I think is very important to be able to see what you want. And so many forms of meditation, breathing techniques. So breathing techniques go both ways. So let's say I'm breathing just like Emery was saying, very upper lungs, not really breathing. I'm hyperventilating, and I start to change my breath. I'm going to change my physiology. So it goes both ways. So my physiology will change my breathing, but I can actually use my breathing to change my physical state. Relaxation response, there's more to say with that. Heart rate variability. So there's a lot of different techniques that we can use that are basically just biofeedback opportunities to understand where we are in the moment, and also how to use something like our breath or our heart rate to measure our state, fight and flight versus rest and digest.
And nowadays there's so many apps available, it's unbelievable. One of my an old practice I was at before I moved out here, I would actually do a walking meditation on my lunch break because we had this beautiful little park and stuff. And so, put on the app on the phone, put my headphones on, and just kind of cleared my headspace for the afternoon. But now you can find like the heart rate variability apps on the phone. You can do meditation. There's breathing apps. There's so many things available, tools, and I encourage people to seek them out. And other ones, and stuff that we did, journaling's a great one, art therapy. So there's a lot of things just to kind of help take a deep breath in your day and kind of help restore and save those little adrenal glands. All right. So what can we do besides assessing ourselves and looking at sleep and our being very mindful of our day, is looking at your nutrition. And the nutrition is really important. A phytonutrient-rich diet is a colorful diet. In my house, we have this rule: you have to eat a rainbow every day with my kids. So they have to eat a green food, they have to eat a purple food, a red food, an orange food, yellow, and they just roll their eyes all the time. Mom, okay. But we have this because I want them getting all those colors, because that's where all these small little nutrients that work with our digestive system and give us our adrenal glands, our thyroid gland, our sex hormones, all the rest of our body, so much input. So a colorful diet is really important. Not the browns and whites that we tend to see with a standard American diet. We want lots and lots of color. The elimination diet, and people sort of go, oh, it means I'm eliminating everything. No, elimination diets are very specific. It's you and your provider sitting down and figuring out what should you eliminate from your diet. We want to decrease foods that trigger you. Sugar, you've eaten a high sugary diet, that's going to trigger your cortisol response. So we may put you on a diet where we eliminate a lot of the sugars, especially the processed sugars in your diet. Maybe there's certain specific food sensitivities or even allergies. Maybe it's dairy, maybe it's gluten. But elimination diet doesn't mean you have to go on a dairy-free, gluten-free, soy-free, corn-free. It doesn't necessarily mean that. You sit down and you kind of work with someone and see then what are also their responses. As well, the standard American diet is a very high inflammatory diet and stuff. So, and it's very toxic. There's a lot of chemicals in our processed foods. And when we do testing on our toxic burdens in our body, we can see what a standard American diet does to us. So we really kind of want to get away from the bag, the box, the canned foods. I always tell people it's kind of like pretend like you're eating at the farm. You go to the farm and you eat it in its most natural state. So you have maybe some beef, not a hot dog or a hamburger. You've got the garden and stuff. We may have some grains in their more natural forms, not refined white flour and stuff. So I would say think about our ancestors, what they did. They had the farms and stuff. And so as much as we can try and incorporate that into our life is going to make a huge impact in your whole health. It's important stuff when someone has adrenal issues. We have to stabilize that blood sugar. So they're the type of people that need small, frequent, low glycemic or low sugar meals and stuff. So they are the people who have to eat possibly every 2 or 3 hours or get that snack in because it helps to stabilize that blood sugar in. And protein's really important. I think a lot of people just don't get enough protein in their diet, and good quality protein. They're like, oh I'll get, and they might have it 1 meal a day. So you had small amount of protein is going to help stabilize that blood sugar as well too. Another big thing for adrenal glands is caffeine. caffeine actually starts to shut down the adrenal glands. And so caffeine's one thing we really tell people you gotta, as much as we all think we need it and stuff, but think about it. That patient A that I had there where the cortisol was low, what do you think the first thing she's gonna look for in the morning? Caffeine and sugar, because her cortisol is not high. So she needs an oomph. She's got to get through her day. So she's going to look for caffeine. And remember how her cortisol curve just spiked right down really fast? She's going to look for that caffeine to keep giving her a boost. Long-term wise, it can't sustain it. And the adrenal glands actually are very sensitive to caffeine. Alcohol as well. And then, like I said, refined carbs. Anything else nutritional? No? All right. So here's just some general foods. We kind of all know these and stuff. These are some of the, the good quality foods that really support, because they're just phytonutrient-rich foods. They're pumpkin seeds, free-range eggs, our dark green leafy vegetables, broccoli, everyone should have broccoli every day. Fermented foods, that does help with our gut health. Wild-caught fish, blueberries, sea vegetables, avocados, sweet potatoes, and asparagus and stuff. So the adrenal glands really like these foods here. So what can we do? So everyone always wants to know about supplements, and supplements never take the place of a good diet and stuff. So if we're eating a well-rounded, healthy diet, we don't tend to need a lot of supplementation. But if someone maybe doesn't have their diet quite under control yet, we really want to make sure that we support them definitely with some B vitamins. Adrenal glands do need a lot of B vitamins. Magnesium, vitamin C. Adrenal glands, tend to go through a lot of vitamin C, so we tend to push quite a bit of vitamin C. Zinc, omega-3 fatty acids, and also vitamin D. Did you want to talk? Yeah. Okay. All right. If anyone has questions about why and stuff, we can kind of leave that for the question and answer afterwards.
One thing we could say about vitamins is that a lot of people spend a lot of resources on vitamins. Right. And they have all these vitamins that they're taking, and they've read this blog, and then that blog said
the vitamin graveyard, I call it.
Right. And this is what we call getting your healthcare through Dr. Google. Yeah. So you've got all these vitamins, and then you take them all, and then it suddenly becomes too much, and then you don't take any, and you have this kind of weird relationship with these vitamins. You don't really know what you need. So one thing that we do for our patients is we help them understand what it is they actually need. And then we also help to understand, well, maybe there's an absorption issue. Maybe we need to address why you needed any to begin with. Go to the root cause. So we have a nutrient test, which is a really good average of your intracellular nutrition. It's a 5 to 6 month average. So that's another example of a test that you want to get in a regular office. And you only get that test every 6 months because it's such a good average of nutrition. And it's very personal. And we use those all the time. I found my test results very interesting when I got my test done. I was like, well, okay, not exactly what I expected. And you can really see the results and the progression when you get retested.
And also, too, if we are making some diet changes and stuff, too, if we're taking out certain foods in your diet, we definitely want to keep addressing that we are replacing, like someone on a gluten-free diet needs their B vitamins. Someone who may not detoxify properly and stuff definitely needs a different dietary profile. So, we love this micronutrient test to look at it as well. But sometimes even that test kind of leads us into, wow, well, maybe you have a genetic thing, or maybe we have a gut issue. And so sometimes it leads us, down the rabbit hole a little bit, but in a good way, because we can start to really figure out, wow, maybe you've had a gut issue going on for so long, and you've got an infection in your gut, so you're not absorbing your nutrients, and you're really stressed because you can't eat anything, and then you just don't, your family all wants to eat the same kind of foods, and so it all kind of keys in together and stuff. And so that's why we like looking at the whole person, and being able to offer these tests and stuff if clients need to. And one thing we always tell people with our tests and stuff is that we are not affiliated with any lab in our clinic, so patients know upfront any testing costs. So you're not going to get thousands of dollars of bills. We have good relationships with our companies that you will know upfront. You pay an upfront copay cost, and then that's it. And so that's really important to us because we don't want people to be shocked. Healthcare can be scary enough. You don't need big bills to cause your adrenal glands to go off.
And when Emery says we have no affiliation, that means we receive no benefit whatsoever from any testing that we choose. So we only want to recommend a test if it's the right thing for you. And we can often do a lot without any tests at all.
Yeah. And we have a handout of some of the tests that we do offer in the clinic. And if you didn't grab one, you can always look at our new patient information. We've got a section on our website that talks about frequently asked questions, what kind of testing that we do. So, and even reimbursement issues, which we didn't talk about as well. So if you're you're like, oh, maybe that might be an option for me, please, reference that site and stuff. It's our staff has spent plenty of time making sure you get all your questions answered. All right, so adaptogens. So what are adaptogens? These are actually specific supplements that can help the adrenal glands. And I always I'm a little, Dr. Tetlow and I talked about this. We're a little nervous about putting this slide up because we didn't want people just to go, oh, I have an adrenal issue, I have to start taking all these supplements. You'd be very careful with these. We do recommend that you sit down with a provider and talk about these. They do interact with some medications. They can actually harm you if you take them inappropriately. And then there's a lot of supplements out that are just not good supplements. And our thyroid talk, there was a piece of research that I just came across about thyroid supplements, and it said 9 out of the top 10 online sold thyroid supplements actually had prescription medication in it at a therapeutic level. So just like as if you got a prescription from a doctor. So just tells you that some of the stuff we're getting out there is not clean. So we want to make sure, and we have some in our office. We can recommend some you can get on Amazon and other great places and stuff that are quality products that don't have any allergen in them, and that they have gone through manufacturing standard processing, just like a drug company would with a drug. So I always, just take this with a grain of salt and stuff. These are things that we could use, but please, just don't go out and start taking everything. So ashwagandha is a very interesting herbal. It can work on low cortisol and high cortisol and stuff. So it's a very, very interesting herbal supplement. Some of these you've actually probably seen before. Sometimes in teas, you'll see valerian root and passion flower and kind of like your sleepy time teas and stuff, because it helps to lower that cortisol curve at night. One thing, in the early adrenal resistance, so that's the person who's just, their adrenal glands are starting to shut down. They haven't completely flatlined and stuff. It's just starting to be affected. You see at the last one there, dark chocolate does actually help the adrenal glands, but it's 1 ounce of the really good dark chocolate and stuff. It's not the whole chocolate bar and stuff. So dark chocolate's there and stuff. And then when their adrenal glands are really kind of gone through, sort of a beating and stuff, we can look at using some other supplements and stuff. Licorice root is there. That is one that actually can affect your blood pressure. It can elevate your blood pressure. So we have to be very, very careful with that. So, all right. And then hormones. When someone's adrenal gland is really affected and stuff, we do actually do hormone replacement. This is a prescription. We can replace the DHEA. Remember that whole pathway there? We had the DHEA, and then we had like pregnenolone. It was that first one up at the top, and then it came down and went to cortisol, or then there was DHEA, and that went into the sort of the male sex hormones and then the female sex hormones. So we can actually, if someone's having a lot of issues, we can replace some of these hormones. Hydrocortisone is, and we're not using like the Medrol dose packs and stuff. We are using baby amounts of cortisol, small amounts every single day, and it's very short term. It might be a few months and stuff. If someone's in a lot of problems, if someone's just they can't get up in the morning, they're fatigued all the time, everything hurts and stuff. We sometimes have to step into medications and stuff to support them while they're fixing everything else, getting a better diet and sleep, and being very mindful of what their stressors are. So we do use hormones as if we need to, and that's where that great lab that you saw with all the hormones, we can sort of see, oh yes, we do need to kind of give you a little more prescription support. And these are compounded.
And I would say also that any intervention that we make, whether or not it's a very low dose of a hormone, or if it's recommending a supplement, or it's talking about a lifestyle change or diet, any intervention is designed to help you to be able to do your self-care. So that's the only reason that we would want to do it. And that's when we would discontinue it once you're able to actually do that self-care for yourself. So sometimes the reason why we get into these issues and we go and see the doctor is because we weren't able to do our self-care for whatever reason. So that relationship with ourself and our caring for ourselves, feeding ourselves, nurturing ourselves, and really, loving yourself, that's actually what we're trying to restore. And any intervention is designed to support that.
Yeah. And, I just want to, just looking at my notes here and stuff. Now you can go to certain starts with a G, supplement stores around. And you can get, you know, in sort of the bodybuilder section, the DHEA and the pregnenolone. I do caution patients taking this as well. Just, you know, DHEA, too much of it can cause acne, facial hair, weight gain, aggressiveness, and irritability. So I don't think we want any of those. And we do see that. Even pregnenolone, you can get that online and stuff. And it can cause a lot of downstream effects as well. So I just counsel patients not to go and start self-treating themselves with a little support, at least, you know, looking at your lab work and having some input with someone. But this stuff is available online. We said. All right. So did you have anything else before I go back to our patient? So this are coming back to our little patient A here. So I just sort of wanted to kind of tell you that this patient, I still communicate with this patient. She continues to work on her adrenal health. She's got a healthy diet. She does regular exercise. She meditates quite regularly. And she's really working on her life balance, looking at her family dynamics, her workplace dynamics and stuff. And I don't have her latest labs, but I thought you'd like to see how she's doing. That's my labs. And those are my kids and stuff. So yeah, so that was me. And so that's why this adrenal stuff is kind of really personal, because it really does impact you. And I can tell you, you don't feel good. You just really don't feel good. And there's a lot of stuff you have to do to kind of keep balancing, and you keep balancing and stuff. So yeah, so my cortisol's high right now. So any summary stuff, points and stuff. So we hopefully kind of gave you a good understanding of what the adrenal glands do, you know, how does stress affect your body, what kind of testing that we would do at Philadelphia Integrative Medicine. Lifestyle is really important for supporting you. Nutrition is key, and then kind of adding in, you know, certain supplements and prescriptions if we needed to when you're in the office. So I think at this point in time, we're on our question and answer. Oh, sorry. You get to point because I did this last time.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Do beta blockers affect the adrenal glands? And if they do, can you wean off safely the beta blockers?
So should we repeat the question for the recording as well?
Sure. So do beta blockers impact the adrenal glands, and can you safely wean off beta blockers? Is that correct? Yeah. It's kind of a multi-pronged, you know. Beta blockers and stuff do impact a lot of nutritional status, you know, like your zinc status and stuff. You know, so can you wean off them? It has to be done, obviously, with a provider, done very slowly. We have to actually, I think, take a step back and figure out why are you on it in the first place and stuff too, because beta blockers can make someone very tired and stuff. So I think we need to look at, is this the best medication for you? And there's reasons and rationale and stuff, and we still do follow standard medical care. There are certain patient groups that they really should be on a beta blocker for their health protection and stuff. So I think that's sort of one thing, is looking at why is someone on it, and if there's alternatives to get them off of the beta blocker, because we know it does impact someone's how they feel. And also can affect in men and stuff. It can also affect their libido, and you know, and so we want to make sure those hormones are optimized first. So I would kind of sit down and figure out, why are we on it? What are your symptoms? You know, are we looking at the right testing and stuff? Are you a candidate that can come off of it? And so making sure you have all your clearance testing done to wean off. But I've had patients come off beta blockers before and beyond other things, whether it be natural or we had to go to other medications and stuff too to stabilize the blood pressure.
Yes.
The cortisol level, it showed how it dropped right away. What is the normal curve for the cortisol level? Would it be up? Okay.
Yeah.
So just
And
right.
it's just like that. And then there's a little sometimes a little dip in the afternoon and stuff like that. But that's basically what it looks like.
Yeah, we're going
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. And then it comes back up again and stuff. And so where it comes up. And that's why I used to live in Las Vegas, and I used to work with a lot of casino employees, shift work and stuff. They were my adrenal nightmares, because they were working some night shifts and they were on the day shift. And this is our casinos, I shouldn't even just say casinos, all of our hospital employees. And so to try and get them to balance out their adrenal glands was really challenging because they would switch their shifts all the time. And that was, and honestly, I sat down with some of my really tough cases and I said, you need to think about switching permanently to one shift, whether you stay on days or whether you stay on nights. I said, because long term, you're going to run into health problems. And I can't tell you how many casino women have breast cancer. Like, it's really high. And I attribute a lot of that to that shift work. Their environment also potentially as well, but that shift work is really challenging to try. And so if you're on a shift job, that's going to be a big thing that we're going to have to really work with you on.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yes.
When you do that saliva test, is it just one day, or do you do it like a couple of days?
We do.
So the question was, if you do the saliva test, is it one day or is it multiple days?
Yeah, usually we just do it one day. It can be done multiple days and stuff, but we usually can kind of get a good picture on one day. We say just take an average, like we don't want you to have the most stressful day or just a relaxed day. Just take an average day and do that test on an average day for you. So just say it's a regular workplace day and you've got all your family dynamics going on and stuff. So it's a challenging test you have to do, schedule yourself, because it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to fill up one of those tubes and stuff. So we tell people be prepared to do that in your day and stuff. But it gives us a great, when we get that saliva test back, you can see what it sort of shows you very quickly, and then we sort of tie that into some of your symptoms, and it's just like the light goes on.
So what you also might have seen on Anne-Marie's slide was you're getting these 4 data points for the cortisol, but at the bottom they tell you your DHEA. So that's a male hormone, but it's actually unisex. It's a male and female hormone. So you're going to actually see what's happening over long term. Are you kind of in the middle? Are you low? Are you high? So you're getting all that data. Cortisol 4 point and the DHEA.
Yeah, because the DHEA is important, because remember I said you may have a normal cortisol curve, but your DHEA may be falling, so that's an early marker for us. That's an early marker for us that something's going on with your adrenal glands and stuff. Yeah. Both DHEA and cortisol are both low. So the test that I showed you of mine, it was a different print. I just cut out the cortisol stuff, but there was DHEA on mine and stuff, so they were both low. So.
Other questions? Let me get my phone. Yes, go right ahead.
How does menopause affect the adrenal glands, or does it negatively affect?
Okay, so how does menopause affect the adrenal glands?
Okay, so menopause is a natural process. It is a natural change. And in a lot of cultures, women don't have any symptoms at all. In our culture, we have a lot of symptoms, and part of it is because of our lifestyle and what we're doing with our adrenals. Mm-hmm. So when you say menopause and you ask a question about menopause, its context is everything. Mm-hmm. So there aren't actually a lot of questions about menopause in some cultures. Like, we're not even talking about it. So your question was, how does menopause affect the adrenals? Was that your question?
Or does it? Yeah.
So menopause is a hormone change. So we have women have ovaries that are secreting a constant amount of sex hormones. There's estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And that when you go through menopause, it's almost like it's no longer a continuous amount of hormones. It's a blip. It's like a lot and then none. A lot and then none. That's when you would feel a hot flash, is when you have that withdrawal of no hormone. So it's like a destabilizing thing where you used to have a lot that was continuous, and then you had this sort of there, not there, not there. So if you have really good nutritional input, and if you have really balanced adrenal glands, for example, you're not constantly skipping meals, or you're not, constantly under stress, or really putting yourself under stress, then you're not going to feel that there and then gone hormone, with the sex hormones being sort of blipping on and off. You're not going to feel that quite as much, because your other systems are going to be stable. Your thyroid's going to be stable, your adrenals are going to be stable, right? So usually stable thyroid and adrenals makes menopause completely different for women. And when women come to see us and they say, oh, I'd like you to give me some hormones, the first thing we check is their thyroid and adrenals, to make sure that your system and as a whole, you're healthy before we start to do things like replace hormones. I mean, there are side effects to having an extended period of time when you're exposed to estrogen, right? Does menopause affect? So it can go both ways. So let's say you get really stressed with menopause, and you're getting those hot flashes all the time, and you can't sleep. And so yes, that's a stressor. You're going to have more cortisol. Your curve is going to look different. Your DHEA is going to be different. So yes, it's going to affect your adrenals. But actually working with your adrenals could help the menopausal symptoms be easier and be less.
And like we said at the beginning, we tend to look at those hormones all together. So those three groups, it's the adrenal glands, the thyroid, and the sex hormones and stuff, because they interplay so much with each other. And when I first started doing my training and stuff, I did hormone training first. That was kind of my area and stuff. And I really looked at the female hormones, and then I kind of realized as I was giving women hormones, it just wasn't working as well. And then I really focused on this adrenal, because that was sort of my early training and stuff. And I went, oh, it's adrenal stuff. And then as I got more into it, I'm like, oh no, there's also the gut health. Oh, there's also autoimmune inflammation. And so it's kind of it's everything and stuff. So yes, can menopause? I think symptomatic menopause can affect the adrenal glands. But if you're asymptomatic, no. So
you could come and see Anne-Marie, and you could be asymptomatic, and you could be just riding, just going through that transition and having it be much smoother for you.
Yeah.
School counselors are just making me think of somebody has an anxiety disorder. What does that do to their adrenals?
So what does an anxiety disorder do to our adrenals? It does a lot.
Yes. Yes. Well, it could be, depends. Early, like say a kid's going to a new school, and oh, I'm in middle school now. I'm really anxious. This curve's going to go up, and then over time, they don't meet any friends. They're getting bullied. There's, a lot of social issues going on. Oh, their adrenal gland's going to start to fall. But they're, so yeah, adrenal glands completely can affect anxiety. But then there's anxiety has got so many other the neurotransmitters, the brain, neurohormones from the brain and stuff. The gut is huge. Do they methylate or detoxify appropriately and stuff? But yeah, this is a huge piece of it. And it's an easy test for a kid to do, actually. The spit tests are easy for them to do. Actually, they think it's cool.
Just think about our mental health system is so focused on not the physical part at all, and how much that plays a role in it.
Yeah, well, it's amazing, because we've talked to our psych providers out there, and we've asked them about some of these. Well, do you look at your neurotransmitters? Do you look at? And they're kind of like, I'm like, you can, and stuff. And there is a lot of opportunity from. And we said we treat people, we don't treat labs, but the labs can give you such input on where you're going with cognitive behavioral therapies and lifestyle interventions and stuff too. And you think about, counselor kids with school, if they're not sleeping well, they're staying up all night on their phones, we know they're not eating a great diet. So you can work, like I said, you don't have to have the labs to know someone's having an adrenal problem, but you could start working on the interventions, the lifestyle stuff. It just kind of helps you to kind of, you're not getting there on your own.
But, Melissa, even as a school counselor, you could take a few pieces from this talk, and there's things that those kids, like maybe there's one thing. You're like, you're like, oh, okay, I can recommend all this. So, and sometimes it's good to give them a choice. You say, here are 3 options, pick one. And this is actually going to help you feel better to deal with these.
Rainbow diet. You have to eat a color of the rainbow every day.
I want to know what a purple vegetable is. What's purple?
Eggplant, radicchio.
Blueberries, blackberries.
Radicchio.
Yeah, and stuff. Some of the lettuces, purple carrots.
Right, there's purple lettuce.
So purple blue kind of thing. So.
That's a great question. What are the purple foods? This is what we should be talking about, right?
But I was thinking of one of the other ones. And sea vegetables. What are sea vegetables?
What are sea vegetables? Anne-Marie?
You could go with that one. So we ever see kelp?
Yes, there's seaweeds.
That's big.
The Bragg's. Ever had the Bragg's seasoning salt?
I've tasted seaweed. It's good.
No, the Bragg's seasoning salt. There's a Bragg's seasoning salt has and stuff, and you can just sprinkle it, and it's just as like a seasoning and stuff. And it's fine.
So this is also a great source of iodine. So if you're not liking sea vegetables, then you could always take like lobster. No, that's not a daily food that we have here. I think I was going for lobster, but potatoes, cranberries have a lot of iodine. there's certain foods like there's another one that I'm not thinking of.
Kombu is the other one and stuff, the sea vegetable. Kombu's, and actually, you know, when you go to an Asian restaurant, you have that soup at the beginning and the green stuff in there, that's kombu. And you can actually, if you're cooking soups, you can just throw it in and you don't even taste it
So in everything.
and stuff like that.
Right. So then not tasting it might be an advantage.
Okay.
Exactly.
Other questions or comments?
Do you like the space?
Yeah.
Yes?
Very nice.
And you can hear, right?
Okay, great. Question in the back.
Intermittent fasting. How does that affect adrenal, those with adrenal insufficiency, things along those lines?
Intermittent fasting has a lot of health benefits behind it, you know, for the brain and
Just
stuff.
define that for people so they
Yeah.
know what that is.
Basically, you know, you're doing a fasting for 16 to 24 hours of no food and stuff. So there's a lot of health benefits, and there's a lot of cool research coming out with it too, for brain health, which we're gonna have a talk on in January. Someone who has adrenal glands, I can tell you no, because they aren't eating it regularly anyways and stuff. So I think we have to hold the intermittent fasting, because I think they probably are doing it themselves anyways, and they're chronically intermittent fasting. You know, and if you think about, I'll give an example and stuff. A woman is coming in, she's tired all the time, you know, she's feeling heavy, she's just not, you know, she's not eating and stuff, she's worried about her weight, and then she goes in intermittent fast, and she's going to start shutting down her thyroid hormones, which is make it harder for her to lose weight, and then she's going to keep wanting to you know, cut back her calories and her diet and stuff. And I think, you know, we have to really look at someone where they are in the stage of treating themselves and what kind of diet they have first and stuff. I think once you fix someone's adrenal glands and they're doing great and they're eating a well-balanced diet, I think there's some huge benefits to it. But I think if you see a typical kind of adrenal person with a lot of other hormone issues going on, it's just not going to work. And so, because they'll tell you, I'm already not eating. You know.
Right. So intermittent fasting is very helpful if someone is really paying attention to their nutrition. So you're having really nutritious, nutritionally dense meals. And then maybe you have a very early dinner, and then you're not eating after your dinner all the way until the following morning. So you have this period of an intermittent fast where your body is learning to cope without that glucose input, without you eating. And the idea is that your mitochondria, the energy centers in your cell, are learning to like produce a little bit more energy because they're not getting the fuel, but they have to kind of like up their game and do a little better job. And that you're overall helping you're educating your mitochondria to produce energy.
Yeah.
So that's the theory. So that works if you're healthy enough to sustain, and you're not hurting yourself by starving yourself, and that you're really focused on your nutrition and what you're eating for those meals.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that because the key point with someone who has adrenal issue is blood sugar stabilization and eating those small frequent meals. And until they've kind of got that down, would I even ever consider something like that? But there's some great benefits, even the brain and stuff. So that you, with intermittent fasting, you can release a hormone called brain-derived neurotropic factors that actually helps to enhance and grow our brains, especially as we're getting older. So some great information coming out, but I wouldn't recommend it unless someone's got a really great diet.
Sounds like you're going to be talking about intermittent fasting in January at your talk.
I'm going to be talking about it in January. All right, we're going to talk in January. Well, as we're speaking about talks right now, so we're going to do a cardiovascular talk next month here in the same room and stuff. So just kind of looking at, you know, not just, you know, hypertension, but looking at kind of like, we call it, you know, metabolic syndrome or diabetes and stuff. So people who may have some sugar impairments, you know, some weight issues. So, you know, cardiovascular risk factors and stuff, and sort of what kind of testing you can do. And there's some really amazing testing out there. What kind of supplements you do, what kind of diet, you know, we may talk about more on types, cardiovascular type diets. And, you know, spend more time kind of going through some fun stuff on it. And then Lauren is doing a GI talk in November.
Yep, November 28th, so the Monday or the Tuesday after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
On SIBO. That's, some people are really wanting to talk about SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That's a mouthful. Some people are like, what are you talking about? SIBO and leaky gut. So again, these are topics that you might not necessarily know or have heard of before, but the basically a GI health is a focus for November 28th, that Tuesday. And that will be Lauren, and she's really hot to trot on that topic. She's very excited about it. I think the PowerPoint's done already.
Yes. And then you're doing December's, I think, or
I think you might be doing December.
okay. I haven't decided that. But I know January and stuff, yes, we'll be doing a kind of a brain fog, mild cognitive impairment, maybe some, I don't like saying the Alzheimer, but maybe some pre-mental health. That's what we're going to look at a little bit more. So,
It's a really great thing to discuss.
all right. Any other last minute questions at all? No? All
I
right.
really want to thank you, Anne Marie.
Thank
You
you,
did
Dr. Tetlow.
a fantastic job.
Thank you for coming tonight.
It's been a lot of time preparing. So